Things are not looking good for Pixar. Yeah, I know you've heard that before, but now they're really not looking good for Pixar. Telling the truth here, folks, Pixar could cease to exist in the future. Now, I don't think Disney is going to throw them away in total, but perhaps it'll just be the name, and everybody else is going to be gone and be rolled into Disney Animation Studios. Why do I say this? Why are we going on this sort of a limb? Well, Elemental is Pixar's next big movie in theaters, and it is headed for a bomb unlike any other. Pixar seems unable to make a profit, and that's a problem. All right, folks, welcome back to another fantastic video here on the WDW Pro channel. Every day we aim for excellence, we strive for it, and we try our very best to explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve. Helping us do that is someone who is, well, aptly named for the task at hand, Culture Casino. Welcome back to the channel, sir.
Thank you, Pro. It's a great pleasure to be here once again. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, you are a fan favorite, so I'm excited to have you once more. Folks, as we get into this conversation, if you like content like it, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to those algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. We begin today with an article out of Slate. That's right. It's a date with Slate on the video today, and here we go. Pixar's new movie is so bad it makes me worry about the studio's future by Dan Coy, or Coy. We'll go with it. Now, what's funny about this article, Culture, is that I have been saying this now for weeks, months, what have you, that Pixar is in trouble, that they may not even exist in the future, that they may transition to being a name only rolled into the rest of Disney Animation. It makes no sense to have two animation studios that are essentially doing the exact same thing. I think this is the first time that out of the mainstream, we have heard journalists say the same. Let's dive right into this article, and I want your thoughts on it. Elemental fails in ways no Pixar movie ever has before. Boy, that is not good, because there have been some stinkers. Cars 2, Good Dinosaur, etc. Oh, a little thing called Lightyear.
Oh.
Here we go. Lots of people have proclaimed the decline of Pixar, and they've always been wrong. Ha! What about Lightyear? Come on, if you said Lightyear was the beginning of the decline, you got it right, folks. Don't worry. Even at the very beginning, when the company spent 3 years rewriting the script for its very first feature, and observers worried that Disney was throwing good money after bad, it turned out Pixar was simply inventing something brand new. And Culture, by the way, when it says this, let's just take the word Pixar out, and let's replace it with Lasseter, because that's really what we're saying here. Lasseter turned out to be doing something brand new. But he was caught hugging a little bit too much and was sent packing, another genius out of the company that is Disney. Each time naysayers have declared the end of the company, Pixar has responded by releasing a masterpiece. Lasseter released a masterpiece. In 2013, Monsters University represented its second mediocre sequel in 3 years, and the company announced that it had nothing in the hopper for 2014. But then, Inside Out. In 2017, The Good Dinosaur, Pixar's first real flop, and then the 1-2 sequel punch of Cars 3 and Finding Dory. The Atlantic ran a piece called How Pixar Lost Its Way. But then Coco. Even the fiasco of Onward's early pandemic release and the box office cratering was immediately erased by the artistic triumphs of Luca and Turning Red. Culture, there's something very interesting about this paragraph. Yes, it identifies that Pixar has struggled in the past. No, it does not tell us that it was Lasseter making all of these comebacks. But as you look at what has been the hardships that Pixar has faced, they seem very recent. And when it talks about the comeback, the most recent comeback, it lists out Luca and Turning Red. Now, I don't know about you, but I mean, Luca's okay. But Turning Red's not real great. And I'm not seeing a comeback so far. What do you think?
Well, I think they're leaning into a very clever trick of words, and I'm sure you would agree because you craft words all the time.
I try.
It said artistic triumph. It didn't say financial triumph, or it didn't say anything having to do with a people pleaser, right? It said it was artistic triumph. It couldn't say it was successful. And say what you will about Onward, which I think the box office run was indeed cut short because of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
But Luca, I agree with you, a marginal film at best.
It's a poor man's Little Mermaid. Although Disney has attempted to go even poorer as of late.
True story. But with Turning Red, if we still had the straight to video releases that Disney was famous for when they were falling down many steps, Turning Red would have been one of those.
Well, it was bad enough that Disney at the last moment pulled it from theatrical release and put it straight to streaming. And that was probably due to them knowing that it was going to be a major embarrassment. So artistic achievement, maybe. Financial flop would have been, and thus it was pulled.
Indeed.
Let's continue on in the journey. So it could be that Elemental, the company's dishearteningly mediocre new film, is just another bump in the road before something miraculous comes down the pike. But I worry because Elemental, directed by Peter Sohn, is bad in the ways that Pixar's previous misfires haven't been. You can't explain Elemental away as a franchise fare for kids mandated by the Disney machine the way you could Cars 3 or Lightyear. Yes, the kids were pining for Lightyear. They so wanted Lightyear. Oh, no. It's not like The Good Dinosaur, also directed by the same gentleman, which had the misfortune of being a beautiful movie for young children that suffered because of the appeals to all ages expectation the Pixar name creates.
Yes.
And it goes on to pontificate and defend and shift the blame for these other Pixar films that did poorly. But the bottom line is, if you read this article, and folks, make sure you go to Slate and read it. The bottom line is that this author is recognizing that this film Elemental is so bad that it's indefensible, that there's no way to go to this and spin it. The media intelligentsia that loves supporting Disney because Disney supports them, they even are having to jump ship. It's simply too rotten. It's too bad. And it's the same story we're seeing with Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. Likely the same thing we're going to see with the Marvels. Culture, has Disney lost the magic, and what caused it to leave?
Well, I think I agree with Forbes, who actually just said that they're terribly, terribly lost, or at least when it comes to Lucasfilm. I mean, there definitely is no force anywhere, and I believe that was Forbes, if I'm not mistaken, or perhaps it was the Fortune, magazine.
Fortune, yes.
Yeah, that's who it was, and I have to agree with them. I think you would have to agree with them. Disney's been lost for quite some time, and it doesn't seem to matter which brand or nameplate, if you prefer, they are running their entertainment theatrical releases on. They've all been very underwhelming. They've failed to deliver the magical Disney difference that seems to have begun to elude them for many years now. I didn't expect Elemental to be anything that was, breakaway good, something that would rule all at the box office. But even I am not prepared for something I know we're going to cover, which is what its eventual performance will be. But I do believe that I'm struggling with the idea that Pixar may be no more.
I think I'm struggling with the idea that Pixar managed to drop this quickly, and really it goes to show you just how important the geniuses are. When you look at these companies, I think it's a stark reminder to any of these boards of directors who think that they can get rid of their major personalities, the geniuses the pioneers who developed these companies into what they are. You think about Apple and what happened when Steve Jobs left the first time. You think about some of these companies, like, for example, what would happen to SpaceX? What would happen with Tesla if Elon Musk were to leave? I don't know what would happen, but there's something to this. And when John Lasseter left Pixar, there was something very significant that walked out the door, and they simply can't replicate what they were once doing. I think that it has something to do with the desire to move away from traditional storytelling and the traditional values held within those narratives. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And I mean, we can go into the political explanations if you want to, but I'm going to try to avoid that and just say that there is a certain kind of storytelling that's being utilized now that is completely soulless because it can't live within the bounds of a moral framework. It lacks that. It replaces morals with power. And that's a perfect description of postmodernism, right? Yeah.
The idea that truth is non-existent, but power is what controls the world, and you base everything on the perception of power.
Yeah, and that's the other problem. You believe that you can replace someone like, let's say, Lasseter, who's the primary example because we're talking about Pixar here. You think you can replace him with a committee that have like studied what he does, but they don't understand what he does. And it's I mean, I feel bad because I think Pete Docter's, okay, and there are many others. I'm just throwing his name out there because it might be one that our audience is familiar with, but at the same time, he's not Lasseter. You cannot replace a visionary. You can't replace somebody who has the kind of bandwidth and personality, as you described it, that somebody like Lasseter is. Same thing with, you named him, Steve Jobs. You've got Elon Musk currently. You've got a handful of these people. There's not a lot of them. And
there's a reason for that culture. So let's dive into that. That's an interesting philosophical issue that we should touch upon, and then we'll go on to the box office results. But what we're witnessing there, and companies should understand this, is we're witnessing the Pareto principle. Now, are you familiar with that? It's sometimes called the 80-20 rule. Yeah. That's a simplistic way of looking at it, but essentially, the people at the top, or within any kind of structure, biological, et cetera, inside the universe, this even applies to stars in the galaxies. It's crazy. But if you look at the output and the success within a subset, an appropriate set of parameters, what you find is that there are exponentially increasing levels of success and exponentially decreasing numbers of people able to produce that, or biological systems, what have you, okay? You can do it with the size of frogs in a swamp. You can do it with the most popular songs from the 60s, right? You will find that the vast majority of songs from the 60s are not played, and that the songs which are most favored are very few and are played far beyond any of the others. And it follows this very interesting exponential graph. Now, what's interesting about the Pareto principle is that a person like John Lasseter, it seems to me, is the key to the Pareto principle for Pixar, right? So it's not that Pixar is the one that is able to produce at whatever level it is that causes families to adopt the content far beyond anything else. It's the genius of someone like John Lasseter. And when Disney throws away people like that, or any corporation throws people away like that, they throw away their opportunity to sit atop the Pareto principle, in my opinion, because these very extreme geniuses, and that's what we're talking about. John Lasseter must be such an extreme genius creatively and organizationally that it's even difficult to fathom. But these kind of people must exist, and you might think of it, like in basketball, there are Michael Jordans, right? And I mean, just phenomenally better than anybody else. Yeah. And when you throw those people away, you decimate the ability to be successful at the level that you were with them.
You also find that those particular people have the an ability to have like a level of recall that others don't, and they see beyond the details to some of the minutia behind things. This is funny. You and I frequently have talked about this. You are also losing like a level of institutional memory. Anytime you lose an employee, especially one that's been around for a long time, you're losing institutional memory. That's irreplaceable. But when you lose something of that caliber, if it's that kind of person, you have decades of information in that person's head that is irreplaceable. And then he's going to go on down the road and do a better job for somebody else. Disney's doing this an awful lot lately, and they can ill afford to. I watched an entire group of people walking out of Imagineering right across the street to go work for Universal.
That's a great point. And we've seen this. There was just a video that we put out in the last few days talking about the Disney archives, where the legacy of the company is difficult to maintain now because they have eliminated positions, so that the Disney archives are now down to 30 people total to maintain everything to do with the history of the company. You can imagine. You're talking about props, audio, movies. You're talking about cells. You're talking about animation, everything. 30 people to maintain it.
I mean, that job in and of itself is Herculean. I mean, and to continually reduce your staffing that's somewhat criminal. Of course, not actually, but it should be. So. It's
amazing, and the legacy of the company is what should be at the foundation. Well, let's look at and see what pragmatically occurs when companies do what we've just been talking about. And here we have it. This out of Box Office Pro, this just breaking yesterday, late in the day. Weekend box office forecast: The Flash, Elemental, and The Blackening debut for Father's Day and Juneteenth frame. Now, I will say this, Culture, and I am not trying to be spicy in the least. I don't know that Juneteenth has any impact on the box office. I'm not saying that to denigrate that day. I think it is a significant day. But in terms of box office, I don't think it has a box office impact. And we can talk about that perhaps in some member exclusive content later about why. But
yeah, understood.
But anyway, all right, let's get into this. Sean Robbins is the author. I want to hit that.
Yeah.
After strong performances by Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and Transformers Rise of the Beasts to kick off June, the coming holiday frame sees a trio of wide releases hoping to counter-program and take advantage of a double holiday weekend. And again, that's why I have to say it, folks. It's really, it's like a combo package, right? It's not like Christmas and New Year's. And that's the point I want to bring that up. And I don't even like talking about it because I don't want anybody to come away from this video saying, well, Pro said that Juneteenth isn't a big holiday. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying in terms of box office impact, they both operate sort of as the same unit. And so we just need to understand that. All right, so The Flash from Warner Brothers, June 16th. We've got an opening weekend range of 60 to 80 million. That is down. It's not good. And the only reason we're going to discuss that right now in this video, which is about Elemental, is because typically what you would see happen, Culture, is that when a film underperforms, then the competitors would rise.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to see that apparently with Elemental. And I want to give you an example of when we've seen this significantly. One of the biggest times that we ever saw this was with Frozen 2. Frozen 2 came out, and it did fine, and it was looking good. It was beating the internal projections that Disney had. But then it took off. It had a second set of legs over its Christmas holiday, and that was because Rise of Skywalker / Rise of Palpatine underperformed dramatically.
Yes.
And as a result, families were looking to go to see a movie over Christmas, over the New Year holiday, whatever you want to say. They wanted to go watch a movie. And so they were going to pick one. And because people were having such a bad word of mouth regarding Star Wars, then you saw Frozen 2 rise. You saw Jumanji as well do quite nicely. But here with The Flash, it's doing poorly. I don't think we're going to see this with Elemental. And so I want to ask you this before we bring up the total, Culture. Do you believe that families are actually intentionally choosing not to go see a Disney film? Because if they don't go see The Flash and they don't go see Elemental, are they just staying home? Are they just doing the picnic instead?
My argument would be that they're going to stay home. I've been looking at this weekend for a long time, and it has everything that you need as far as something we would refer to as counter programming. Correct. I mean, you have a superhero film that may appeal to the whole family, but you have younger viewers that aren't going to be able to go. You have an animated feature that's coming out that, obviously would appeal to a broader scope of audience, especially younger folks. Although based on the descriptions of Elemental, I'm not sure that that's necessarily accurate. And finally, then you have the too cool for school kids and, the unreformed adolescents like myself who like horror films and they like comedy. So they'll go see The Blackening. So you have this perfect, storm of films that should bring everybody in on a holiday weekend, right?
Should be a big one.
I don't think it's going to be.
No, I'm with you. I don't think so. And then it gets worse as we go to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, that has been projected as low as 60 million. I have my concerns that it could drop below that. We'll see. But Disney has quite the issue before we ever get there. It's called Elemental, and here it is, folks.
Oh, no.
31 million is the bottom now. 31 million is the bottom.
Whew.
That is a number that I can't even believe.
I can't fathom.
If you were worried that Disney is going down the drain, this is it. I mean, this really is it. 31 million. There was a time when you could slap a Disney logo on anything, and you were guaranteed 75 million. 31 million, to me, if it goes down that low, and of course that is the bottom, but this is what's so amazing, Culture. Usually, when we get to this point, the films have a bit of a range on this, right? They've got this narrowed down now based on the the pre-sales for tickets that they are tracking and then comparing to comparable movies at the same time. They've got this down to a 10 million range, and they must be confident. 31 to 41. When 41 is the top, it's terrible. What do you make of it?
Well, look, this wasn't tracking well to begin with. I mean, they were looking at this, months and months ago, and it wasn't tracking well. Under 50 million were some of the numbers that got thrown out there early. And it wasn't surprising to me because it didn't have broad appeal. This was not flagged for a whole lot of promotion. Disney usually knows when they have an film on their hands, a mediocre film on their hands. And so they don't financially support it. And we can get into the reasons why they're very tight with the purse strings right now, because that factors into that as well. But I'm having a hard time with this 31 to 41 million. And, it's got to be because it's not going to appeal to the younger audience. This is maybe a tween and up film would be my guess. I don't know. This is the question they should ask from the very beginning. Who's this for?
Well, they've said that it is an immigrant story. I don't know what to make of that, but I'll say this. When Strange World came out, of course, that was the November Thanksgiving weekend release for last animated Disney film. When that came out and we saw the projections, and they were down here around this range, but better still, I joked that you could release a remake of The Wuzzles, right? That's an early 80s cartoon where you had Chimera plushie style characters, sort of a forebearer for Gummy Bears and DuckTales. Nobody knows The Wuzzles. And I joked that you could bring that back. You could do a reboot of that in CGI and make more money than Strange World. Probably. I don't know what to joke about anymore. Like, I don't know what property at Disney would be so poorly known that I could bring it up and say, you could do this instead. I don't know what, there's no way to make this little money if you're Disney. There's just no way to do it.
You bring in you bring in super marionation of like the Thunderbirds or something, right?
Yeah, something. I don't know.
I don't know. Look, this is sad, but I knew this was headed this direction. It's an interesting group of people that are behind this film that are probably the reason why it went so sideways. And I'm not going to point any fingers directly, but some of these people have a history for delivering things that'll underperform. And
there's no winners in this. This is going to suck for anybody involved in this film. You put years into this, and this is atrocious.
And that's the thing most people don't understand. These Pixar films are out, they're working on these things forever. I mean, they storyboard, then they work through story, then they storyboard. That's still part of the development process before they even lock in a story to write a script around. And you get all these different things, being put together in many different layers, many different talents of different types for landscapes and backgrounds and all of that, asset creation. And because it's like making a video game, and it takes a lot of people, a lot of hard work.
And it's hard to believe that in all that process that we're not seeing the geniuses come forward and say, no, that doesn't work. We've got to make a change here.
What you will know this, there was what eventually became an incredible Pixar release that was saved by Lasseter because he walked in the room and he said, "This is entirely the wrong direction. We're going to scrap it and start over."
Well, now that happened actually more than once. I'm thinking that you're going to say Toy Story 2. What are you going to say?
No, you're right. Toy Story 2 is the most infamous story because it was one of the very few times. Now, Lasseter's one of the nicest people on the planet you could ever meet. Amazing human being. Very warm. This is one of the times when he wasn't. And those were few and far between. But he's very blunt. I mean, he'll tell you if you're doing good work or not. But and you didn't have anybody in the room to do that in this case, right? I mean, we've seen a few of these. Lightyear, I would have been like, you know what? The scene that you're really upset about that they want to cut and all the other things that are built into this thing that aren't very appealing to all audiences. Yeah, we're going to get rid of those and we're going to try again. You know, some of this is good, but we got a lot of work to do.
The problem with Lightyear is that 50% of it was bad. I mean, it wasn't just the marketing. It wasn't just the idea of parents having to leave the theater and explain how mommies can have a baby to your 5-year-old, but it went beyond. I mean, there was just so much wrong with the film.
Well, and visually it was a little rough too, but we can set all that aside. And that's the other problem. It's the same thing that we're seeing with CGI. You're starting to see it in Disney animation where you're like, this isn't really quite polished. It's not exactly finished. I don't know. Are they becoming the new video game? Anyway, I can set all that aside. That's me complaining. But
let's find out, Culture, what the excuses are. Let's find out what we've got out of Box Office Pro. Here are the pros first.
Okay.
Given the glut of action-heavy films based on pre-existing IP in theaters this weekend, Elemental and its return to original storytelling for Pixar could be an attractive option for families with young ones. Well, according to that number up there, I don't think so. Although an initial wave of middling reviews created concern, the film's current 81% approval rating from a total of 48 critics on Rotten Tomatoes renews hope that the film may generate staying power well beyond this weekend. And folks, just know that the way that is done is that the top critics are still not impressed, and the all critics, that being the access media who depend on those early premieres, they'll do Disney's bidding. So you'll see that number rise. It doesn't change the quality of the film. No. The early reviews from the top critics are already out there, and we already know, and we've already read articles from people who just can't defend it. No. And it goes on to talk about how there's not going to be another animated film until Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Now, all of that, I think, makes this number look worse, actually, because there's literally nothing competing with this film in its genre. But the cons, I think, are even more hilarious. The con here, this is really something. I mean, you need to be on some sort of psychedelic to come up with this. With The Little Mermaid still going strong at the box office, let me say it again, folks. A film that is likely to lose something like $200 million. Let me say it again. With The Little Mermaid still going strong at the box office. After a $23.2 million third frame. Ooh, that's doing really great, that third weekend. Disney will be competing with itself for female moviegoers of all ages. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse also remains a formidable opponent as an animated box office hit. Okay, let me say this. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is probably triply the powerhouse that Little Mermaid is for this upcoming weekend. You don't even have to start with The Little Mermaid. It is a non-starter compared to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse at this point. But continuing. As other animation brands such as Illumination and Sony have become more popular among young moviegoers, and as Disney recovers from its pandemic-era straight-to-streaming strategy for many family movies, including 3 recent Pixar films, Elemental may not have the kind of robust upfront audience interest garnered by earlier Pixar films based on original IP. Now, Culture, I want to turn to you for this one because this is a strategy that the press is using to try to defend this as best they can. And here's what the defense looks like. Rather than admitting that Pixar is in deep, deep trouble, they try to say, well, Disney has trained families to believe that the animated films will come out quickly on Disney Plus, and therefore they should not spend money at the theaters. And I think that's totally bogus. And the reason I think that's totally bogus is because it's not happening to the other studios, and they're putting their content also on streaming. And in fact, it's so bad that you had Puss in Boots, which was completely available on streaming, and yet still performed phenomenally well at movie theaters. So, Culture, I mean, am I missing something here? What is going on? Why are they trying this? Why are they trying this strategy?
Look, I mean, good shills are hard to find, and when you've got them, you pay them well. I don't know.
We need that on a shirt. We've got to put that on a shirt. Good shills are hard to find.
But it's crazy to me. I mean, you're not missing anything. You're right on top of it as usual, Pro. But I don't know. This is a ridiculous strategy. It's full. There's a lot of bold-faced lies going on here. Why are we explaining away its performance, and why are we misleading people about what the next animated decade film coming up is, because you have the competition and thumbing the nose at Disney with the Teenage Kraken film, because I believe that comes out, let me double check, on June 30th.
Yes. Now that one is that. So we will be covering that soon. There are some very interesting stories about that film.
Yeah,
we'll be chatting about.
It is very, very similar to the first Shrek movie, where it just kind of shreds Disney a little bit along the way. And I have a feeling that that's going to resonate. For some reason, it's almost like Disney has become their own villain, or a villain to the audience. I don't know, but as far as just to answer your question, as far as why they're characterizing these things this way, is because it's their last line of defense.
How well do you think that? And I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please go.
How well do you think the next Shrek movie, which we now know is in the works, how well will that do if they just make fun of modern Disney?
Oh, that thing's going to soar. That's going to clear $1 billion easy. And I mean, that's where we start to get into these conversations about just how far, the magic has fallen away, or, the luster's off the leaf or whatnot. For Disney.
The luster is off the leaf.
Yeah.
Sir, that is another tremendous phrase. I'm stealing that one. I'm writing that down in my notebook right now.
But it is, it's look, the leaves are no longer gilded. I mean, it's just, you could go on, and it's when it comes to Disney, I mean, maybe perhaps, it's scratched away, and what we found is fool's gold, because Disney doesn't deliver the level of entertainment and escapism that Illumination is doing. It's not bringing up to the DreamWorks standard. Anything that Universal seems to have a partnership with or control of, they just seem to be hitting it out of the park, and they've kind of done it to themselves, and they've alienated themselves from family, which that was their core audience. Disney at its core was about family, and Walt, all you have to do is go back to Walt. He wanted a place to take his girls, and it was a family park, and I want to make family films. Yeah, they've moved far beyond that now, and we can get into that another time. But
indeed. Now, Culture, I do want to wrap up with one final article, but we are just briefly going to touch this one.
Oh boy,
we really don't have to go farther.
Oh boy,
Jeremy Fuster is the author for this one. It out of TheWrap.com. Elemental projected to earn $40 million box office opening, ranking among Pixar's lowest. Now, here's the thing that we need to focus on, and folks go check out this article. It's in the description. Click on it. We're not going to read much of it, because here's what we need. Only 2 of Pixar's 23 theatrically released films have ever opened to less than $40 million. Now, reminder, we just discussed that the most recent Box Office Pro projection has this down around 31 to 40, which would mean 35 is the split. This article came out May 25th, where that probably seemed to be impossible.
Yeah.
Now, here's why we need to know about this, okay? The Good Dinosaur opened to 35 million over 3 days, right? And that was considered terrible. Onward has an excuse. Onward had the pandemic situation. So really, we're only dealing with The Good Dinosaur as a legitimate sub 40. But here's the issue. The Good Dinosaur opened in 2015. Now, if my math is correct here, I am saying that from 2015 to now, we have seen a 40% increase in movie ticket prices. And what that would mean is that if this film opens just to 35, it outperforms the bottom. Okay, so Elemental comes in at 35. It does the split and lands exactly where The Good Dinosaur is. Then that would mean that still Pixar's very worst had, what would we say, 60%? Versus 40% here? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I can tell you cumulative rate of inflation from that point to now is 28.3%.
So movie ticket prices have far outstripped.
Oh, indeed.
Exactly.
But just to give you just a breakdown in actual dollars, just a dollar for dollar comparison for inflation.
Sure.
The Good Dinosaur today, if you're using that $35 million figure, would open up at $44,910,000.
Compared to this one, which has a 31 bottom. And remember, folks, we're talking about the worst. I mean, I'm not going to include Onward. It's not fair.
That isn't fair.
Let it be said that Pro will defend Disney when fair is fair.
Yeah.
But The good dinosaur is the one that's down there.
Mhm.
We're talking about the worst that Pixar has ever performed, and this one is significantly below that. In
That's
terms of
insane.
butts and seats, it's way, way down. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, that money we were talking about represents, even fewer, patoots sitting on
that's right.
sitting on the seats.
Derrieres, they are going to be in less demand over at the cinemas for this one.
Wow.
All right. Well, culture, we have walked through it. We've explained it. We've kept people ahead of the culture curve. When their friends say, "Can you believe that Pixar film was a flop?" They'll say, "Yeah, I watched it with Pro and Culture Casino. I knew that was going to happen." So, Culture, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Well, I try to make it really simple. I'm at Culture Casino, and that's everywhere. YouTube, Rumble, Lines, Odyssey.
He's not lying. It's everywhere, folks. It's everywhere.
Yeah. So,
But you can start by clicking on the link for Culture Casino down in the video description. Culture is one of those channels that I highly, highly recommend that you subscribe to. His content is fantastic. You'll also see him on other channels like Midnight's Edge, etc. And it's always a pleasure to get to see him on any panel in which he is enjoined. Well, folks, we hope that we have done a good job. We've endeavored to do so. The conversation here has come to a close, but the commentary has not. It's your turn. Drop a comment down below. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. Please do not waste that mind you have. The human mind still remains the most intriguing, fascinating, and powerful thing in the universe, and you have one, so share with us what you're thinking. If you're not yet a member of the channel, it's the price of a soda, so try it out. Dip your toes on in. And the Pro Show, Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We have all kinds of expert panelists to help us walk through entertainment and that culture curve. So, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Make sure to catch the Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.